In this episode of In the Trenches with Dave Lapham, brought to you by First Star Logistics, we visit with color analyst Pete Bercich of the Minnesota Vikings, and he gives us a tremendous breakdown, offense, defense, special teams, almost position by position, about the Bengals' upcoming opponent on September 12th to kick off the 2021 NFL season. Very interesting, very informative. You're going to like it. Welcome to In the Trenches with Dave Lapham, brought to you by First Star Logistics. We're in our beautiful First Star Logistics studios, and special guest for this episode, color analyst for the Minnesota Vikings, Pete Bercich. And good morning, Pete, and appreciate you joining us, sir.
No problem. I'm in my not so beautiful First Star Logistics studio. So
Gotcha.
It is what it is, right?
It is what it is. I hear you,
Right.
sir. I hear that. So the Cincinnati Bengals, the Minnesota Vikings tee it up on Sunday, September 12th. How has training camp gone for the Minnesota Vikings, Pete?
You look at the the work that they got done in-house, as far as we could tell, as far as I could tell, was great. The couple days they had against Denver went real well. Preseason games, however, we didn't score an offensive touchdown until the end of the third preseason game. So does that have a lot to do with Jake Browning being the quarterback and instead of Kirk Cousins, missing Dalvin Cook? I mean, Dalvin Cook is what makes this offense go. So what you're trying to figure out, it's just that the offense just isn't clicking. Now, you asked me what time it was, and I'm kind of telling you how the watch was made. I mean, I don't know how deep. I don't know. You said we have 25 minutes, but I could go on. I could go on for a while, but we just never got all of our pieces on the field at one time in the preseason. So it was you're like, yeah, we're almost that, and then Thielen came out, and then this guy came out. Jefferson never made his way onto the field. Cousins played very little, which makes sense, but so offensively, just trying to get that offensive line really figured out. We got a couple new faces on there. We don't have a whole 5 new ones like you guys do. I know that's been a huge part of what's going on in Cincinnati, getting those guys up front to mesh. But you feel Anthony Barr hasn't practiced. But other than that, it's been great. That's what preseason's about, though. You want, it's about getting your starters ready.
Sure.
And you get asked that question. You're like, wait, are those guys ready to go? And you go, they look good in practice. I mean, we just haven't, we don't know.
Right. Last year, Miker Zimmer was on record, who I have a tremendous amount of respect for. He was as good a coach as I've ever run across when he was here with the Cincinnati Bengals. The guy is a defensive wizard. But he said last year it was the worst defense that he's ever had, and obviously was taken apart by injury, opt-out because of COVID. I mean, multiple Pro Bowlers weren't on the football field. And then when you lose your linebacker duo, one you lose, Barr you lose for 14 games, and his partner you lose for 5. I mean, it's a different ball game. Having all these guys back, are all these guys going to be back and able to roll? And will that defense look a lot different than it looked last year?
Yeah, it's going to look. It's. I think personnel wise, yes, it's going to look a lot different. In that respect, we have 7 new starters on defense. I count Danielle Hunter as a new starter because he didn't even see the field last year. He didn't make it out of training. He didn't have training camp, but he didn't make it even into week 1 last year. You signed Dalvin Tomlinson from the New York Giants, who was a nose tackle with the Giants. I really liked the way this guy plays. They moved him out to 3 techniques. So I love that. Having coached D-line and stuff, it's people think, well, you're just moving 3 feet over from where the center is, but it's a completely different world right there. Your techniques are all different. Reactions are all different.
Right.
So he's he's very, very good against the run. How, him rushing from, he's a very good zero-nose pass rusher. At least with the Giants, he showed a lot of that. How well will he do from the 3 technique? We'll see. The big guy, Michael Pierce, and by big, I mean, 6'2", 350-ish, 340-ish. I mean, he's a monster. Having those 3 guys up front will make everybody behind them better. And as our defense goes, it's how well can we stop the run with 2 safeties deep? And we couldn't do that last year. And I think that's, once you have to tip your hat and say, all right, we have to bring a safety in, and the quarterback can just, this is the NFL, quarterback just looks, sees single high safety, and then they just throw it. They couldn't do any of that last year. And this year with those guys up front, now we have Stephen Weatherly and DJ Wanham kind of fighting for that right defensive end spot. That's kind of the only spot where you're not going to see a guy who is very established, so to speak. But, having Barr and Kendricks at linebacker is going to be huge. And then, defensively, we had 3 rookie corners on the field quite a bit last year.
Right.
And now you have Patrick Peterson, who's going into year 12. Bashad Breeland is going into year 8. A guy that Alexander, Mackenzie Alexander, you guys are familiar with him. He's going into year 5. Then you have Harrison Smith and Xavier Woods in the back end. So outside of Harrison Smith, all those other guys are brand new. So it's just going to take a while, I think, to get those guys all to play together. But they should be able to communicate. This isn't their first rodeo. They're veterans, right? And I think obviously we had a top 5 offense, bottom 5 defense. Yeah. That is, that's going to get fixed. But again, with 7 new bodies out there, not all, they all didn't play together in the preseason at one time. Barr never made it onto the field.
Yeah.
Peterson didn't make it on the field, but obviously that was their decision. So they haven't all been out there together at one time. And that's just one of those things where, man, there's a lot of communication that needs to go on, but they're veterans and hopefully they'll be able to get it done.
Peterson, 8 Pro Bowls, 31 years old. Harrison Smith, 32 years old. He had a stretch of, I think, 5 straight Pro Bowls snapped last year. From what
we're getting sponsored by AARP now.
Right. That's what I was going to say. From what you've seen, still some rubber on the tire for both these guys?
For Patrick Peterson, I think yes. There is, you look at last year and he covered the opposing with the Cardinals. He covered the number 1 receiver
right,
week in and week out. And he did that all last year. And there were some touchdowns that made him look really bad. And some of them I think were miscommunications with he and Budda Baker. My point is, if you use him and you're able to spell him every once in a while, yes, I do think he can, play. Is he going to play at the level that he has in the past? I don't know. Is it going to be better than what we were with last year? Yes, 100%. So, and I think the other big key is that Peterson really wanted to be in Minnesota. I mean, you mentioned Mike Zimmer earlier and your thoughts on him. Well, I think Peterson shares a lot of those same thoughts. He reached out to the Vikings to say, yes, I want to play for Mike Zimmer. I want to work in that defense. I want to play in that system. And so that, I mean, what more could you want? So I think the combination of, and veterans, oh my God, you can list hundreds of them that just at the end of their career, they need a little change of scenery, right? You get that change of scenery and it gives them a little bit of a boost. So I think for this year, going into it, I think that they're going to use, they won't have him out there every single snap. And that's one of the things I love about Peterson is he stayed healthy. That's like my new pet peeve with players is guys that play for, 8-10 games a year. Right. But Peterson, Dalvin Tomlinson, Michael Pierce, these guys that we've brought in, if you look at their stat sheet, they've been healthy and have stayed healthy. Yeah,
that's obviously a major factor. Availability is the best ability to have. There's no doubt about that.
You're right about that.
Hunter, coming off of the neck surgery, Hunter with the neck surgery deal, is there any concern there? Or does it look like he's just full bore ready to go?
He looks like he's ready to go. Obviously, there's always a concern there. I mean, with any type of neck injury, he's worked really hard to build up muscle. I mean, muscle is what protects all the ligaments and tendons and all those other things. So he's done a lot of the weight room work to build himself up. I mean, I'm not a thoracic vertebrae specialist. I mean, I'm not really sure. I was fortunate enough to make it through my career without any, neck injuries. So I'm not a specialist on any of those things, but he looks great. Endurance is always a thing. I don't know. I haven't checked the weather yet for Cincinnati for Sunday.
It'll be hot.
I was going to say we were in Kansas City, but I remember being at those practices a couple years back when we came out a couple days early for practices, and you get down in that river valley, my man, it gets hot. So is he ready? Is he ready? Yes. Is he ready for a 1 o'clock kickoff in Cincinnati opening day with the heat? We shall see. We shall see.
Another Pro Bowler, Barr, with the shoulder injury, and you mentioned that he hasn't really been on the field all that much. How's he coming along?
He's a big question mark, right? I think going into this game, from a personnel standpoint, he's a question mark. He had a torn pectoral muscle last year, that, he had surgery. So he missed almost the entire season, decides to stay. And now it's a knee, I believe, issue, something that's kind of nagging at him. We haven't seen much of him in practice. Didn't see any of them during the preseason. Now that they've moved inside and they keep everything cloistered as far as that goes, we're at the mercy of what they say. So my guess is as good as yours on that one. You know what I mean? I think he'll be. Anthony Barr, when motivated and when healthy, is an unbelievable football player. His issues have been that he's not your stereotypical Sam Mills at 5'10" that's just built like a tank. I mean, he's 6'4", 6 foot, almost 6'5", 260. He's just a long, lean type of a player, and so the wear and tear is a little different on that chassis than it would be on someone who's a little thicker.
I think that this number, when I read it, boggled my mind, and I know Mike Zimmer is definitely using this as motivation. 50% of the drives, the Vikings defense was scored on 50% of offensive drives last year.
Mm-hmm.
Second worst in the National Football League. That is so non-Mike Zimmer-like. And
if you see him before the game, when you see him before the game, are you going to bring that up to him? You're going to get him going? I mean, I don't know. Was he as grumpy in Cincinnati as he is now? You know what I mean? He smiles every once in a while, but I love that about him. It's the
he's a man's man.
It's just nothing. It's just there's always. I just love his mentality when it comes to that. It's very old school, and I appreciate it. Last year was. It was a personnel thing, right? I mean, that was a big part of it. And when you have rookie corners, 3 rookie corners, right? Dantzler, Gladney. I mean, you're playing, guys that are all backups now this year. I mean, we don't have a single guy on the defensive line, especially going into the season that started the game at the end of the year. So. It's like I said before, 7 new starters, 8 if you want to go nickel. That was completely revamped and redone. So that should be fixed.
So you have co-coordinators on that side of the football, and Adam Zimmer obviously being one of those, Mike's son, and Peterson is the other. But Mike calls the defensive signal still. There's no two ways about that. Mike's always call the defensive signals. Let's flip to the offense a little bit. And Clint Kubiak is the offensive coordinator. Gary Kubiak's son. Gary retires. Clint takes over. Has never called plays. Any concern there as far as your understanding?
No, as far as my understanding, as a that's an art form. I mean, you look people ask this question or they always ask the question like, how come with these coordinators you kind of see these same names just get recycled and recycled and recycled, and you think about what an offensive coordinator has to do. I mean, not only do they have to have the scheme and the mind and the plan, but you also have to be able to put together a supporting cast of coaches that know how to implement every single fundamental, because the fundamentals all build up and tie into the system. And so you have to have those guys around. You have to be able to game plan, right? You have to be a great game planner. And then on top of it, the big thing is being able to call a game. And you kind of don't know until you get your feet in the fire. Now, does he have a lot of experience? Does he have his father teaching him along the way? Should he be pretty well prepared? I believe so. Sure. In the preseason, we didn't see, and Zimmer alluded to this in one of his press conferences, a lot of shots down the field. Well, when you don't have Jefferson and Thielen in at all in the preseason, it's a little tougher to get down the field with KJ Osborne and Whop Fillier, right? It's a little different task. And then Irv Smith, Irv Smith Jr. we didn't have, and we won't have. So yeah, it's hard. It's hard. You can't. It's impossible for me to sit at a chair, watch a game, and make an assessment as far as how that's going to go. But yes, that is absolutely something that we're going to have to watch closely to see how well Clint Kubiak just kind of slides into his dad's shoes as far as play calling goes. Gary was outstanding, very explosive. He did a wonderful job. And working with Zim, you got to have a very strong personality at offensive coordinator, right? You got to have a guy that's going to stand his ground and be like, no, Zim, this is how we're doing it. And so we'll see how all that relationship works out. And obviously the more points they score, the happier Mike will be.
Sure. No doubt about that. No doubt about that. Let's talk about your quarterback position, Kirk Cousins. We had kind of like a Charles Dickens special, tale of two seasons. You start 1-5, he throws 10 interceptions, and then 6-4 down the stretch, and he throws only 3. But he throws 35 touchdown passes, career high, but slow start. But what about Kirk Cousins? Where is Kirk Cousins at this stage of his career?
He's continuing to learn. He's been at times very frustrating to watch, but at other times he's an amazing quarterback. He can do what only a handful of people on the planet can do. And I always point to the Carolina game last year when we were down. Carolina had scored 2 defensive touchdowns back to back. Right. And by the same guy who was a rookie, and I'm trying to remember his name. He's a rookie safety from Carolina. That's never going to happen in the NFL again. Right. Literally fumble, fumble, touchdown, kickoff, first play, fumble, So we played from behind, and Carolina decided to just rush 3 guys, and Cousins led us back. And that, I think, is Kirk Cousins kind of in a nutshell, is the guy. If the game's a 7-on-7 type drill, he will pick you apart. He will. The key is getting pressure on him, getting him to not feel comfortable in the pocket. And as a play action passer, as an out of pocket passer, he was outstanding last year. You look at his numbers and his passer ratings outside the pocket, they're all north of 100, in the 110, 111 area. He does that very, very well. So now you go back to the Clint Kubiak and say, is Clint going to coordinate this thing the same way with the play actions? That takes me back again. It's about Dalvin Cook. And when we have Dalvin Cook in the backfield, defenses have to respect him. And by respecting him, I mean schematically, personnel-wise. And if Dalvin is getting and moving the football, then Cousins is even better, because then he could play fake. He could turn his back on a defense and then find somebody down the field. So, if you handcuff Dalvin Cook to Cousins, that's a really, really, really good combination back there. If we're missing Dalvin and it's just Kirk, then it gets a little spotty, so to speak, because you can concentrate on him and just stop him. So in that respect, Kirk's been fabulous. I mean, I think since he arrived in Minnesota, he's been a bit of a target, mainly because of the paycheck at the time,
Sure.
and even though he's not the highest paid quarterback in the league right now, people still think he is because he was 4 years ago,
Right.
or 3 years ago. So he has that, stigma kind of around him. But yeah, like I said before, as a passer, he is as accurate down the field as anyone that we've seen, or anyone I've seen, really. I mean, he that's what he can do that very few people can. Make strong arm throws, the outs, the deep outs, all those different things. So, and then having Jefferson and Thielen, I mean, in the red zone, Thielen scored 14 touchdowns last year in the red zone, so he's one of the best red zone route runners there are in the league, and there is in the league. And Cousins, Cousins is very mechanical, right? He's going to throw the ball where the defense dictates it and everything else. It's when you get in the red zone, he's just going to say, boom, I'm throwing it to Thielen. And that created a lot of magic last year. So, that improvisational kind of thing is not Kirk's style. He's not, he's the, anti, Mahomes, right? He's the anti, he just doesn't do that kind of thing.
Right. He's not an improvisational guy. There's
no
doubt about that.
Theater isn't one of his things.
Right. 14 red zone touchdowns for Thielen. That's ungodly. Cook, 1,557 yards, averaged 5 yards a carry, and he rushed for 16 touchdowns, and he caught another touchdown pass. Is he the straw? He's the straw that stirs the drink, obviously. And then you mentioned Thielen and Justin Jefferson. How about this dude? 88 catches, 1,400 yards, 7 touchdowns. He broke Randy Moss's rookie records, 1,400 yards, second most ever by a rookie in NFL history. I mean, did the Vikings know what they had, or were they even surprised by what he did?
It's funny because since we drafted Randy in 98, and so it took 22 years to get another great receiver in the first round, and we've had 3 really good first round draft picks at wide receiver. Now in between, there have been quite a few that haven't quite gone that way. Right. With Jefferson, I don't think we knew what we had until we played Tennessee. It was 2 or 3 weeks into the season. And I think the other thing, when you look at Jefferson and his numbers, if you really break down in his stats, he had statistically much better games at home than on the road, which, he's just a rookie, who knows? However, but his game against the Bears in Chicago last year was fantastic. Now, it wasn't a huge box score day, but man, he had some catches and converted some third downs and did some other things that were really amazing. He's a down the field guy. He's not a whip screen, get him the ball on the fake reverse, let him, do his thing, jitterbug down the field kind of situation. He doesn't fit what like Kansas City likes to do with their guys. He's definitely a play action. Again, this goes back to Dalvin Cook. You play fake, you let Jefferson get up onto the safeties, and depending on whatever you have sitting up there, he's able to make a move and then make a double move and then have Cousins get him the football. So most of his, or a lot of his throws, were from in the 10 to 20 yard type category, and his run after the catch is outstanding as well. So the young man, once he gets the ball in his hands, he's dangerous as well. But the catch radius is kind of what I saw to him. All these other receivers that I've seen, receiving's an art form. You can't just be a 4'4" guy and 6'2" and be crowned a great receiver. Right. You have to have the ability to separate from defensive backs, and he can start and stop, and he can move and do those different things and create separation. and then he has an unbelievable catch radius, meaning the old school. And you have in T. Higgins, you have that guy,
Right.
Burrow can just see T. Higgins. He's covered. He's going to throw him the 50-50 ball. He's going to come down with it 75-80% of the time. That's kind of where Jefferson is, and I'd love to see even more of that. Is just get the ball near him, and he's going to be able to make that catch. That is what differentiates him from all the other receivers that we've had roll through here over the past 20 years.
Up front with the O-line, you've invested 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, a third-round pick with the potential starters. How's it gelling up front?
We haven't seen what we predict to be the starting group. Darisaw has been nursing an injury, so we'll see if he doesn't go, then we'll have Rashad Hill go. Rashad Hill is a good football player, but he's kind of the 6th guy. So left tackle is a bit of a concern. We'll see, how that works out. Ezra Cleveland is into his 2nd year. He was a tackle in college, moved him to guard, long arm guy, good run blocker. I think he's getting better. He's doing a great job. Garrett Bradbury, very athletic, a little just needs to get stronger at the point. I mean, unfortunately for centers nowadays, and you play in a division with the Packers and the Bears that love playing the old school Bear front where they have one-on-ones in the middle. So you're going to be one-on-one against a damn good nose tackle, whether it's Keem Hicks or whomever. Yep. But he's got to learn, really to drop his anchor. At right guard, right now it's Oli Udoh. Who's Oli Udoh? He's been around, he's been with us, but he's actually made that step and had a pretty good solid preseason. And then Brian O'Neill is our right tackle, and I think Brian O'Neill is one of the best right tackles in the NFL. He's just every year continued to get bigger, stronger. He was an offensive lineman at Pitt, started at tight end. He's an athletic guy that they turned into that they developed from a 295-pound senior in high school to where he is now. So, Brian O'Neill is definitely our best offensive lineman.
Tight end position, Irv Smith Jr. you mentioned is not going to make the dance. What's the tight end position look like?
Well, I mean, I'm going to have to actually, and I apologize for this, but I'm going to have to go to my phone to find out the guys that we traded for, and that talking to Irv Smith, I played at Notre Dame with his dad. It's been a tough situation for him, right? I mean, obviously he had a meniscal issue. He goes in and boom, now he's out for the season. So we do have Tyler Conklin coming back,
right?
Who's toward the end of the season started doing well or doing better, as a receiver. Now you go back and look at Dalvin's top runs from last year. Kyle Rudolph was in for quite a bit, and then Irv Smith Jr. was in for quite a bit, and I don't know if this team needs that receiving threat at tight end. We have a decent receiving core. Right. We need a blocker. We need someone in there that can move a body. And so that position doesn't concern me as much as long as we can get someone in there that can, that can take on a defensive end or a good outside linebacker. And, really your role at tight end, I think, is to accentuate the talents of the running back. Kirk is not like I said before, he's not a scramble guy. Find somebody underneath and get 8 to 10 throws to a tight end throughout the course of a game. Right. So, the question going into the season was who was going to be the number 3 receiver. And a lot of people thought that was Irv Smith, that he may flex out, kind of run those routes and be a big body type wide receiver. So, that's a big question mark going into it.
Finally, the all-important special teams, the third phase. Last year, struggle cost the special teams coach's job. New coach heading up special teams. What do you anticipate, Pete?
Hopefully mistake-free, right? We've had issues with consistency in the field goal game. You know, I don't know if it's US Bank Stadium or whatever it is, but guys just seem to have trouble with extra points. It's kind of, and if you're a Vikings fan, you have a tremendous history with kickers, whether it's going back to Gary Anderson in '98. I mean, it's, you know, it just goes on and on and on and on. But some new faces, new faces every year. So it seems in that battery, bringing in the kicker from Pittsburgh, we let our punter Colquitt go. Punters are punter. You know, do they make a difference? Yes, but I don't think those kinds of changes are going to be huge per se. But we had too many muff punts, too many mistakes. So it's kind of one of those, you need special teams to, just like Denny Green would say, when on punt return, when the whistle blows, I just want the football. I really don't care where it is. I just, make sure that you have someone. We brought in D.D. Westbrook, hopefully to be a veteran punt return guy. Amir Smith-Marset, the rookie from Iowa, has done a good job, in the preseason, but how good do you feel when you have a rookie out there returning punts, right? You go to Cincinnati, you go somewhere, it's a different atmosphere. It's windy, it's outside, whatever it could be. Do you trust him to make the right decision? You got to have a good decision maker as a return guy, when to take it out of the end zone on a kickoff return, all those things. And, hopefully we can play mistake free. It doesn't, you want to win a game or two on preseason, on special teams, but we've had anything but consistency, I think in that aspect. So if, games that are coming down to a field goal, we're going to be nervous up in the booth. I'll tell you that.
Well, you just hit on a thing, consistency, don't make mistakes. One thing the Bengals have to know, and I'm sure the coaching staff does know this, and they'll impart that on the players, you better play hard, because Mike Zimmer's teams play hard. Like Mike Zimmer himself has said in the past, sometimes we don't always play as smart as we should. We're going to play hard, and that's what's going to take place in the 12th. Pete, really appreciate your breakdown of the Minnesota Vikings. Very informative, and can't thank you enough. Appreciate you.
Oh, thank you. Last time I think we were in Cincinnati, it was in October, because Oktoberfest was going on right outside of our hotel. So I don't think we're going to have that problem this time, this time out. But love Cincinnati. I mean, it's going to be, it's going to be a lot of fun. You guys, with Burrow, I know you guys have a whole new offensive line, but I'm really excited to see T. Higgins and see what that guy can do. Hopefully I'll see highlights, week 2 and afterwards, but it's going to be a really good game. Right. It's that first game. What's going to happen? How's it going to go? I'm really excited to see, how this team kind of comes together, because like I said, we haven't seen all of our parts out there at one time.
Have a great trip down to Cincinnati. Safe trip, Pete, and we'll see you in the booth, my man.
All right, we'll see you there.
Hi, Dave Lapham here. Have you heard about In the Trenches with Dave Lapham, presented by First Star Logistics? Catch new episodes from the world of sports and broadcasting. Search for In the Trenches with Dave Lapham on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.